Hello, Joe. Welcome to Bird Brain.
Hello, Kelly. Nice to be here.
Tell me, do you actually like birds?
I do like birds. Birds used to be dinosaurs. And as I was a kid, I really liked dinosaurs. And now and again, you can see them acting a bit dinosaur-y. And I think that's brilliant.
As a kid that didn't like dinosaurs, I know, not actively dislike them, but I was only interested in the cartoon ones. So, like The Land Before Time, of course, classic, and I loved it. But I was never interested in the dinosaurs. I barely knew their names. Did you actually know stuff about the flying ones? And how many of them could you name?
So when I was a kid, there weren't any flying ones. Pterodactyls aren't dinosaurs.
What?
That's how much I know about dinosaurs. I know all their names.
They're real, though, right?
They're real.
Okay.
They're a
checking.
different thing.
But what are they?
They're reptiles. Flying reptiles, like lizards. But
Okay.
not dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are a specific thing that have evolved into birds. As I was growing up, there's Archaeopteryx. So, like, dinosaurs were all like Jurassic Park when I was a kid,
Yeah.
all leathery. But
Yeah.
now they're finding more and more feathers and coming round to the idea that they may have been more bird-like than we ever thought before.
I have read something about this. The raptor, are they the raptors? The scary ones in the
Yes.
kitchen in Jurassic Park?
Velociraptors.
Velociraptors. Are they the ones that maybe would not be much bigger than like a turkey size? And apparently they did have feathers?
Yes.
Okay.
That's those. But there was a Utah raptor, which was about that size, but obviously doesn't have such a cool name.
Utah, like the place?
That's where they found it.
So, what is your all-time favourite bird character? Obviously today we are specifically talking about Matthew the Raven, and this was your steer because you like ravens in general. But is there a bird character that you prefer?
Yes, there is, but it's not a real bird. It's a bird plane, which is a condor, the golden condor from the Mysterious Cities of Gold cartoon.
What is that? I've never heard of it. And when was it out?
The Mysterious Cities of Gold cartoon is from the 80s, but it's a very 80s cartoon about a Spanish boy who goes to the New World at the time of the conquistadors. And he is part of a legend, and he meets an American Indian girl, and they start to unravel the mystery of this lost civilization with all this technology. And as part of their travels, they find this golden condor plane that they fly around.
Is it a plane that is also sort of alive and a bird?
It flaps its wings. It's made of metal. They sit in like the head of it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's the ancient civilization that it's from used all renewable energy for everything. So there's also a solar powered ship at one point.
That's amazing. I actually think that, considering I obviously am doing a podcast called Bird Brain, I haven't seen that many birds, but one of my favourite birds of all time is the condor. But I specifically went to a canyon that is known for seeing them and had to get a little local bus to get there and didn't really have much of a plan. I think I was very naive at that point about what bird watching entails as somebody that hadn't really grown up with bird watching. A lot of people are there on trips, with their amazing, what are they, the eyeglass or the you know that individual lens, the one that isn't binoculars?
The monoscope.
The monoscope, thanks. Yeah, see how bad my bird knowledge is. Yeah, so the people are there with their monoscopes, and we didn't have binoculars, but we just sat for hours near this canyon with buses coming and going and people going off on their guided trips to do hikes into the canyon, Colca Canyon in Peru. And then this pair just arrived And it didn't matter. They didn't have binoculars because they're massive. And obviously the reason people go to this specific viewing point is because of the way that they are able to use the air at that point and hover around the canyon. They're just stunning, really beautiful. So I really like that. That's really cool. And I love it that you've just brought up a bird character that I've never heard of. Does it speak?
No, it's a plane.
Okay, fine.
The theme tune is brilliant.
Is it as good as the one from the raccoons though, which is my favourite theme tune apart from Inspector Gadget?
I think it's better.
Cities are cold. Cities are cold. Somewhere we will find the cities are cold.
So today's character, Matthew the Raven. For a bit of backstory for people that don't know this character, as I was unacquainted with him until you suggested him, I found out that he was once a man named Matthew John Cable. So this character is from the DC universe, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, make sure I don't get this wrong for all the comic fans out there ready to kill me. He first appeared in a comic called Swamp Thing. In that, the man, Matthew John Cable, is involved in a car accident. His wife's evil uncle, Anton Arcane, who's a shapeshifter, has possessed him. He manages valiantly to break free of the possession, but in doing so, pretty much destroys his whole body, ends up in a coma at the hospital. And as if it couldn't get any worse for him, the corrupt hospital staff harvest some of his vital organs, and his wife decides to end the life support. Very dreary, very on brand, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. After that, Matthew was in the dreaming when he died, which we're going to touch on after. Because he was in the dreaming, he became a part of it. And he was asked by Morpheus, otherwise known as the Sandman, if he wished to be a raven. An offer that he obviously accepted or we wouldn't be doing this podcast. But once he became a raven, the thing that was interesting about him is that he believed that transformation was a complete thing. He was not a raven-shaped man, but a raven at his core. And I know that the comics made that really clear. Having given the listeners a little bit of context for the origin story of this character, what drew you to this bird character?
So Matthew the Raven is in a world of madness in the Sandman comics of over-the-top characters. He's a nice point of sanity. Sandman is Lord of Dreams, and he asks Matthew to be his raven, to use him as a link to keep himself grounded with humanity, because he looks after their dreams and because he's a godlike being. He wants to make sure that he doesn't go too far, and that's Matthew's job, and he's good at it. He is a loyal companion and friend to the Sandman, but at the same time is willing to tell him when he disagrees with whatever scheme he's up to.
Is this a trend in comics, or a theme, maybe not a trend? Like, is this something that does tend to be present in a lot of story arcs, that there is one character, the kind of doggedly loyal, ever-present voice of reason, even if they've got, some really good quips, or they're cynical or they're sarcastic, but their loyalty is a theme? Or is Matthew kind of more unique than that?
I think everyone needs a best friend, which is what he fulfills. I think his uniqueness comes from the world itself. As you said, when he's in the dreaming, initially he's a man who becomes a raven and is a raven, but he's never a raven. He's a supernatural being that can cross between worlds and realms and do his master's bidding. I think that Matthew is a very positive character, and probably a good person to know.
And how would you characterize the dreaming? Because you've got a much better depth of knowledge around it. I've watched the Netflix series after your suggestion. Really enjoyed it. Actually got other people I know to watch it. Very, very compelling viewing. I really liked the visuals, but they're my only real cues for understanding the dreaming. It was very, directed by what they showed me. And I know that you've got understanding from the comics and better understanding of a lot of this genre. What's your take on the dreaming and what do you find interesting about it?
So I'm by no means an expert, and it's deliberately quite dense. It pulls mythology from all sorts of places. A raven companion, for example, can be found through Norse mythology. Cain and Abel are characters in it from the Bible.
True.
There's dragons and death and all sorts of different things pulled together. So the dreaming is part of a larger universe that Sandman comics have created. So in this, there are several universes as well as Earth.
Ooh, okay.
So hell is a real place. Fairy kingdom.
Oh, really? Oh, we don't see that in the series, or not in series 1 anyway.
No, it might be in series 2.
Oh, I hope so.
There's the various gods from history. So there's Loki's chained to the bottom of the world. A snake pours poison in him at one point.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm missing a lot from not reading the comics.
There's the other realms of Dream's siblings, which are like their houses. They live various places, which are carved out of the fabric of the universe. There's lots of different realms, if you like, lots of different places to exist and different rules about how
because
life goes on.
I'm trying to remember. I think that we see 4 of the Endless in series 1 on Netflix. So we've got Morpheus, right? Mm-hmm. Who is Dream.
Yeah.
Then we see Death.
Yeah.
Then we see Desire. Now we see Desire at his home, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And I read that Desire is a twin, apparently, in the comics, and it's Despair. Okay, and Despair is represented as a woman who we see in Desire's home, but we don't see any of the others. So in the comics, they all have their own homes?
So they have their own homes. They're personifications of an idea. So
Ooh.
Death, Dream, Desire, Despair, Delirium, Destiny, and Destruction.
Oh, 7.
7 endless.
Okay.
And the way that their homes are set up is to reflect the ideas that they portray.
Yeah.
So Death in the series and in the comics is a very caring, down-to-earth person,
Endless.
being. And her home is represented as just a normal, nice suburban detached house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with like flowers and
Okay.
paintings on the wall. Dreams is obviously incredibly grand with unbelievable features, giant gates and castles that tower into the sky. And
Dreams Realm is great for comics and for a TV adaptation and obviously for film, because that dream realm, there's such a creative freedom there. Whoever picks up this at any point must just love the fact that you've got complete freedom to turn that into something so beautiful. I really like it that there's the fiddler screen bit in the series. So fiddler screen, for people that are unfamiliar, is one of Dream's creations, but he is the embodiment of the spirit of a place. So it's very much reminds me of like the Shire. A fiddler screen has this really comforting sort of life abundant vibe where you feel like you could go and read books at your leisure. And I really like that.
Yeah, it's one of the nice. Again, it's the same sort of things that the character of Fiddler's Green personifies the idea of the place, the magical
Yeah.
place of Fiddler's Green.
Yeah, it's lovely.
And in the same way, the Endless personify their own bits. So, desire and despair.
The only thing about Desire, did you notice this? In the comics, do you see Desire's home?
Yes.
What was your feeling about the way that it's drawn?
So it's drawn by different artists at different times in different ways, but it's always just a massive statue of Desire that Desire lives in.
Really? Because in the series, I thought it was really interesting that when you go to Desire's home, I thought that there was something really ironic about the fact that it's so sterile. Like, there's a lot of shine to it. Like, at one point, he's on almost like a chaise lounge that's shaped like a mouth, and it's very shiny and very red. But it was so clinical, the rest of it, that I thought, well, there's
Very
nothing.
sterile.
Yeah, there's nothing sensual about that at all. That I was like, oh, it's not like a boudoir. Like, even though he does the whole, like, the way he leans, like, and the way he moves and he speaks in this very silky manner that all links to Desire, the actual environment itself has something so unimaginative in comparison to, obviously, the dream realm. I thought that was weird.
So in the comics, Desire is they.
Ooh.
And I think the sterility of the environment is a take on Desire that is not necessarily a good emotion to have. It is about want and possession,
Yeah.
rather than love, which is not one of the Endless, noticeably. Also twinned with despair is a deliberate choice.
Yeah.
They can come together a lot of times, one after the other.
Yeah. I mean, that is my experience.
So I think Sandman as a comic has chosen the Endless to portray aspects of life and how conscious beings act and go from birth to death and what happens afterwards in some instances,
Yeah.
how they live. And it's been distilled into these 7 aspects: death, dream, desire, despair, delirium, destiny, and destruction. And I think that stands as a way of explaining the sum of experience as a human.
Yes. Are the Endless shaping how we navigate life?
In some ways, yes. Desire has an active role in encouraging people to seek it. Despair is always there if it goes wrong, ready to help them down the spiral.
Very kind.
Death, not so much. Death doesn't cause deaths. Death is just there to guide people afterwards to whatever new realm awaits them.
Okay.
But dream as well actively is in people's dreams, controlling them, allowing them, shaping them.
I love the fact that you've got comic life has caught up with reality here. We do problem solve in our sleep, and there's been a look at why we turn things over in our sleep and we might wake up with a new point of view on it. And that idea of our sleep on it, but there's the reality of we do sleep on things and are able to see them differently because our brain is apparently still processing while we're asleep. Morpheus is guiding dreams to make people understand things better about society as well, right? Or their role within it. The dreams aren't all frivolous, are they?
No, they're not. And one of the themes is the juxtaposition of dreams into reality. He appears often as a guiding character, helping people to make decisions, making events pan out to a plan or an aim that he supports.
Does that undermine free will?
His brother's destiny.
I mean, also, do we need help? Do humans need help? Should we just take all the help we were given? If this was real, would you want these 7 characters to exist? Do you think it would help us to feel freer, or would it make us feel more trapped?
In a perfect world, more of them would be positive aspects.
Yeah.
Desire, delirium, and despair.
And destruction, right?
Destruction, possibly. Destruction could be cleansing. Destruction could be good.
Yeah,
Is
like when you...
destruction of a bad thing.
Okay, so yeah.
From destruction is
If you're performing some
new
coppicing in the forest, sure, but destruction doesn't sound healthy, does it?
it's got a ring to it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
In the comics, destruction has disappeared.
Do you find out why?
I haven't read them all yet.
No. It's mentioned loosely in the series, something about the missing one, but they don't name them. So it's cool that you've revealed to me who that is, because I was going through them in my mind and I would never have guessed that one was going to be called Destruction.
They always call him the prodigal as well,
Yeah.
which makes him sound like he's the best one.
Do you think that's just because he has the most free will?
Well, I've met him now, and he's fun.
Is he?
Yeah, he appears as like a
Wait,
big.
no. Is he a cad? Does he go around like just sort of being glib about everything and just causing casual chaos?
No, he's a big-hearted, like.
Oh, really?
He's a stout warrior figure, if you like.
Like a
Big
Viking.
red beard, like a Viking. Yeah, full
okay.
plate armor.
Oh.
But yeah, he appears during the plague, and it feels like that's something to do with his reason for leaving. They'll turn up at some point.
Ooh, okay. And I really like it. I think the reason that Matthew works so well alongside Dream is because Dream is part of something called the Endless as well. Him and his siblings, right? Those roles they play are endless, and humanity's always going to need them. But that makes them sort of a little bit more disconnected from humanity because their experience is so vast, whereas Matthew seems to really understand more immediate outcomes and dangers rather than this big overarching thing that's unwieldy for humans to really understand. Like Dream is trying to, it's like playing a game of chess for a million years down the road, right? The result, whereas Matthew's pointing out that these things in this moment might have consequences for these individuals, and Dream is sometimes willing to dismiss individuals' plights because of the bigger picture. And I quite like that grounding with Matthew, where he will point things out.
Yeah, he's in that sense, I suppose he's a warning, which has been repeated through mythology with ravens.
So I know, controversially, that I have a take on something that we need to reference and get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the big thing with ravens is that they appear so much in mythology. I think myths are shit. And I feel really guilty saying it, and I know that a lot of people are going to just immediately want to turn this off, and I'm going to get a lot of messages from friends being like, oh, you're wrong, but I've got to be honest, they are. I think nearly all myths are really two-dimensional. They have really, really boring tales that they want to hit you across the head with about, oh, if you do this, we're going to punish you by turning you into like a goat or something. And they're really dull.
So that's quite a big statement.
I know.
I don't agree. I love myths.
All of them, though?
Yes, I think I do. And I will tell you for why. Mm-hmm. I love the idea of what's important to people and has withstood the test of time.
Ooh. Okay, so in all my years as an English teacher, this is what I used to say I liked about Shakespeare plays.
Mm-hmm. This is what people wanted to see in Shakespeare's time. They enjoyed that, and whether we understand it or not, whether the jokes are bawdy or rubbish, whether the plots are overly intricate, people paid their money. They went to see it again and again and again, and because of that, it's withstood the test of time. And I think that's true of myths.
Okay.
They're passed down. A lot of them, yes, are allegorical. Some of them seem quite transparent.
Cautionary tales.
Cautionary tales and ways to keep people in line with the society of the time.
But the thing is, with Shakespeare plays, the themes are enduring and they're relatable. Like, you can take a divided Verona and you could compare it to Brexit Britain. I don't understand how stories about characters like Zeus are enduring to people. What are they relating to?
Well, so if I don't take Zeus, if I take Beowulf,
Okay.
the story of Beowulf is an old retired war hero.
Okay.
He keeps bees.
Right.
That's what Beowulf means, beekeeper.
No, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And now I feel silly.
He's incredibly short-sighted because he's been stung by his bees. And then a terrible monster comes and he has to go and save the people from this monster. Is that not every action film you've seen?
I don't like action films very much either.
But they endure. People still pay to see them.
So maybe it's about the genre of the story. I just don't see myself in myths. Myths are often about the heroes, right? They're often about taking quite decisive action. They're often about violence, death.
Or explaining the world. For example, ravens come into this quite a lot, being the link between darkness and shadow and light, or death and living.
Okay, but that is more about symbolism. That I really love.
But then the idea of a raven being able to foretell the future helps have a control over the future. If you take Morrigan, who could turn into a raven, the Irish Celtic legend, who prophesies the death of an associate enemy, and then that came true, and Morrigan was there as a raven, sat on his shoulder when he died.
Oh, I can't. I actually hate it. It makes me so angry. That's just such a load of bullshit. What's relatable about that? Okay, I am going to just say this. When I first went to uni, I got onto a course called East Mediterranean History. Not because it's the one I'd applied for. I applied to do modern history, and it was the year that there was a massive mess up with the A-level grades, right? So I didn't get the grades I was meant to get. Didn't get onto the course at Birmingham. Didn't have anyone in my family that had ever been to university. I didn't even know what clearing was. And I went to get my results and I had no idea, because I had no familiarity with this process, that it's already decided the day before. So one, I didn't know that this debacle was about to be afoot, where I was not going to get the grades I'd been predicted. Two, that when I didn't get the grades that I was predicted, the university had already known that and declined me. So I'm on the phone to the uni, panicking, and in tears and not understanding what to do. And they're like, okay, you can't do modern history, but why don't you do East Mediterranean history? And I was like, yeah, well, I really want to go into journalism. They were like, yeah, it would be really good. And I was like, excellent. When I went and started doing the course, I thought I was going to be, looking at things that would make me understand the situation in the Middle East now, or at the time in 2003. And actually, we was talking about the Mycenaeans, and I sat in history lectures learning about people on the battlefield that had dreams of their shields in the sky, and that foretold the slaughter of their people or the safety of their people. And I immediately went and applied to go on to another course. And I kid you not when I tell you, I was so furious that they were packaging this as actual history. I was like, this is myths! And I hate myths anyway, but it's also not history. And I think the thing is, I obviously was applying to do a modern history course. It's not like I love fascist dictators, but I find it fascinating that it really is part of our history, that you really can understand where you're going and where you've been based on these actions. I genuinely feel cold at this pile of rubbish about people having dreams about shields, or the Raven foretold this. No, they didn't. This is rubbish. I don't understand why these stories are so enduring. I just don't.
Do you feel that the difference between history and myth is accuracy?
That's a really good question.
Because I would refute that history is what actually happened in any case.
I mean, no, because we do still use sources as well, don't we? Like, we use diaries and things like that, and obviously from like
public
GCSE,
opinions,
yeah,
raised.
and sure, and even from like entry level stuff, they talk to you about thinking critically about sources, and some are higher value than others. But I mean, the whole of human experience is never just fact, because it's the way we interpret facts. So it's not that it has to be completely factually accurate and necessarily proven. It's just that I don't know why that just doesn't speak to me as being a reality I relate to in any way. I do not understand the circumstances in which somebody really believes that the Raven foretold that, or that the shield in their sky in their dream foretold that. And so I don't find it interesting.
Do you think these stories started with the truth and over time became more stylized?
Well, yes, in some cases, like the case with the Raven, definitely. So
Could have been a raven on that dead guy's shoulder.
yes, there could have been a Raven on the dead guy's shoulder. And I was considering the long, complex history that humans have with ravens and associating them with sort of harbingers of death. And there is reasons for that. So, for example, ravens are sort of scavenger birds. So sometimes people would have found dead people because of the noise that ravens were making. Or
They're famously associated with battlefields
yeah.
as well.
So I can understand then as well, and I have a lot of empathy for, and if it was a veteran who'd been telling me that, you know, they were impacted by ravens, that they felt ravens foretold this, that is something I would relate to, because they would also be telling me about this experience of seeing them on battlefields, and I understand those associations. But I think that just these lofty stories on their own, they don't mean anything to me, and they never have. They've never stuck with me. I'm really bad at knowing the difference between my myths as well, because mostly I hear them and I don't find any of them interesting, and then I don't retain them, which, you know, sounds really ignorant, and maybe it is, but it's not. I will listen to them, they just don't sit that well with me. I do like the story of Persephone and the underworld. I find Hades quite interesting, but there's a lot of them that I just don't even remember who they are, because I don't care.
See, that's an example I'd call upon as quite a good example of the power of an enduring story.
Yes.
That's a story of trusting yourself, of not looking back, that is still present in the modern day, and that's thousands of years old, from a completely different culture and a completely different time, and yet people still live their lives in the same way. And that was important to them then. It's important to us now. The same with the story of Icarus, flying too close to the sun.
Yeah.
These are...
I quite like Sisyphus.
Which one's Sisyphus?
He's the roly stony up the hill.
Roly Stony.
Roly Stony, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's call it Roly Stony, but you know, because it rhymes better. Bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. He is. I find Sisyphus quite relatable though, but I really liked the theatre of the absurd as well, and I quite like a lot of writing that's inspired by like the existential crisis. I quite like nihilism, so it doesn't surprise me that I find Sisyphus quite relatable and interesting, because it's positing that question of what is the point, and is the mundane ever surmountable, and what are we here for, and can I escape this? I find that really relatable. I guess I don't find a lot of things relatable that I think just seem to hinge around, can we conquer this, or are we going to be punished for this? If that's the extent of the story, I don't find it very interesting.
You may not find it interesting, and that's fine. That's it's not the society we live in. But I think the the enduring quality of these stories gives us a look into what was important at that time.
Yeah.
In a way, I mean, we've got what, at most 3,000 years of written history.
Yeah.
And these stories, some of them are older than that, and have roots older than that again. They come round, and the same stories keep turning up again and again. Morrigan was part of that triumvirate, the maiden, the mother, and the crone, that appears through everything, through Christianity, through other religions.
I think I find that side of myths interesting. It's not the myths themselves that I enjoy, but I really do enjoy the history of the myths, origins of myths. I really enjoy as well, like the tradition of oral storytelling, and the way that they change depending on who's telling them and what culture. But it's not the story itself for me. I guess it is the origins, the history, the nuance.
Well, I could say the same about Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I find it really hard to read.
Yeah. I also think I had a conversation about this recently with somebody that was talking about, why do we still teach Shakespeare? And it's the same answer as kind of what you're getting at. Why do people still care about myths? It's not necessarily the case that everything we should know about has got to be for us. And I don't think it should be. I think that knowledge is important, even if it doesn't speak to you. Like, I wouldn't advocate for removing myths from a curriculum, for example, and I wouldn't actively tell people we should abolish them and that there's no need for these stories. I just don't engage in them that much. I think that it's really easy to dismiss them. Like, I dismiss them from my own content and consumption. I do not acquire them and I do not give time to them. But I don't dismiss that they have a place, or that they have been of importance, or that they are of importance. I just don't make space for them.
I would argue that you do. You just don't realise it.
Do you make space for them, or do you dismiss them?
There's only so many stories.
Yeah, okay. That is a fair point. And that is true. Okay. Something that I don't like around a lot of myths, their aim. I feel like a lot of these stories rely on the main character trying to exert control, a goal that involves, maybe conquering. I don't really like stories that involve epic battles of sweeping destruction to get your own way and to have the most power and to have the kingdom. The same as, a lot of these stories where it's like, I want to have this woman and I want to have this ability. I just find these stories like really reductive and mostly kind of disappointing that they didn't have anything in mind that wasn't so two-dimensional and boring.
So, in a myth, you have a hero. In a lot of them, there may be a hero who's a king or a warlord of some kind, who's the head of a huge host who does battle. In those, and in a lot of them, you could see a kernel of truth in a battle, in a war, where thousands of people died, were injured, changed their lives utterly. And in that, the hero becomes a cipher for the people who are involved. It's a huge culture shock if you engage in like the Greek cultures in total war, where entire villages would go to war, all the men would leave, and maybe some of them would come back. And in those instances, there's got to be for a purpose. There's got to be a reason for it.
Ah, okay. So they're reflecting back what's happening to them and trying to find a meaning for it.
You've got to make a meaning for life. I think a lot of myths deal with trying to understand the world, especially in adversity, which is why they're often stories. They're not particularly nice.
Yeah, they never seem to be about how can we find a way to build a more equitable world where we consider difference more. They're just like, how can we achieve our own aims at any cost? And a lot of them, I know they're cautionary tales a lot of the time, but there's so much willful disregard for other people's advice or for their own autonomy. Like, there's a lot of drive for acquiring something at any cost that I just don't find. Not only do I not find it interesting, I actually find it quite repellent, and it just makes me veer away from those stories.
Yes, I agree. I don't think our society today maybe promotes those traits in the same way as a strong king or ruler as we may have had before. But at the same time, you could see why they would continue and endure. And I don't think that's true of all myths.
No.
I think a lot of them are cautionary tales in the same way the Brothers Grimm's tales
Don't you dare lump them into the same sad category.
teach children.
Grimm's tales are also full of beautiful uses of language, and that's a massive difference for me. There's too much simplistic style in a lot of the retellings of myths. The same as what was off-putting in that history course is the same as what I find off-putting in the Bible. They're very, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. You can't say that of the Grimm fairy tales, even though there's an overlap in the kind of tales they're telling, the way that they world build in Grimm, the way that you can really sort of feel the experience of those individual characters rather than prescriptively being told, this happened and it means this.
Yes, but you're just reading the cliff notes for these. You've got the original source material for the fairy tales.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't. You're not listening to an epic orator telling you the.
Yeah, maybe if I was sat
The
around
story.
a fire hundreds of years ago listening to these, maybe I would have had my whole imagination lit up by them.
They would have told a better story than the Wikipedia article for
Yeah,
sure.
I hope so, because otherwise I don't see how they've endured this long.
In Germanic mythology, there's the Emperor Frederick, who lives in a cave until he's needed, a bit like Arthur, who's not dead but asleep in a cave somewhere.
I hate all of these stories. I hate all of them. They're terrible stories.
Waiting for his time to come back.
Okay.
And that will be announced by a flock of ravens flying around the mountain he's in.
Or maybe it's announced by him deciding to come home and stop messing about in a cave. Okay, so I do not hate all myths equally. I find some more interesting than others. So, with that in mind, specifically thinking about ravens and the fact that this is called Bird Brain, what myth do you think I might actually find quite interesting?
So there's quite a famous local recent myth from London.
You got it in one. Tell me all about it, please.
So the Tower of London famously has ravens and has for a very long time. The overarching myth is that if the ravens ever leave the Tower of London, the empire will fall.
Yeah, I don't care about that bit. That's ridiculous.
That's not the interesting bit
No,
to me.
not
either.
at all.
There are more myths attached to it. I think my favourite is that Charles II, there were ravens at the tower then.
Yeah.
His chief astronomer was really fed up of the ravens because they were interfering with his telescope, which he put at the top of the tower to try and look at the planets and the sky.
Yeah, that would actually be really annoying, though.
And he petitioned the king to get rid of the ravens.
I mean, we can guess that that doesn't happen.
So it was originally, this is how the myth goes, is that the king looked into it and thought about doing it, but then the power of the myth overcame it, and he wouldn't remove them. But in its place, he set up Greenwich Observatory.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wait, we're attributing Greenwich Observatory with ravens?
To the myth of ravens.
Okay, fine. See, I like that. In general, as well, I've got to say, I make some allowances for the fact that it's pretty cool to have a ravens at the Tower of London. Although, like with most things that humans interfere with, it annoys me that they're kept there because their wings are clipped. They keep saying that they only clip so much and they can fly a certain distance, but I just think that undermines the whole idea of the myth, right? If the idea is that the empire will fall if the ravens aren't there, but you don't give them the free will to leave, that's just humans controlling the narrative.
Yeah, that's making the myth real, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's annoying.
Bringing it to life. I would say, regardless of the animal welfare implications of clipping the wings,
Yeah.
it's an interesting example of seeing a myth, making it real, and then continuing with it for no other purpose than the myth itself.
Why do we do that? Do you think, because my answer to that is, I just think that's a very cynical human ploy to grab power. You create a myth and then you use that myth to frighten, to control, or to persuade. But is there any other way I could look at that? Is that a very cold way to look at it? I just don't understand what the benefit is of keeping this myth going. Like, why can't it just become tradition rather than we still need to, fan the flames of it being a myth that holds actual importance that might dictate something happening in the future?
In this case, the myth is about stability of a construct, the empire. Mm-hmm. And if you're the leader who let the ravens go, and then the empire falls.
Ah, well, the empire did fall, as it should.
Well, in the 40s, after the ravens left in the Second World War.
Okay. I actually did a bit of looking into the ravens at the Tower of London, because, yeah, that kind of outraged individual in me is like, they shouldn't be kept there, they clip their wings. And I know that it's steeped in tradition and mythology, but I found it really fascinating that the current Raven Master, which also is a great job title, he's called Chris Scaife. You can find him on Instagram, and I just think that it's so weird that in a world in which there are still ravens kept at the Tower of London to keep up this tradition of not letting them go, that the actual Raven Master in his ridiculous Beefeater outfit has an Instagram account, and you can find him at Ravenology1. He literally has over 69,000 followers, and he posted a picture of himself just this week, and he's clearly like looking hot and sweaty, and it's a selfie, and you can just see the top of his Beefeater outfit, and he's just written, please stop asking me if I'm hot in this outfit. And it's got over 2,000 likes. And I just think how incongruent that is with maintaining ravens to try and keep this archaic tradition while the Raven Master himself is off finding friends on the internet. It's just weird, no?
I love it. I love the whole setup now is really predominantly for tourism, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how reluctant he is to buy into that. He keeps the ravens, that's his job.
Yeah.
They make him wear the raven uniform, but that's it.
Yeah.
He's not there for you. Stop asking him how he is.
Yeah.
He's looking after the ravens.
Yeah. I like the fact that maybe he's, a real ornithologist who just does not have time for people. He's like, the birds are cool, you guys are annoying. Also, have you heard of one of the previous Raven Masters, George Ryan?
No.
Okay, so in 1986, he was involved in some high-level tomfoolery. So he already had this pretty sweet job as the Raven Master, right? Cool title, probably got loads of kudos, works at Tower of London. He was dismissed from his role, And it was a full-on scandal. He had been removing the ravens to take them to unauthorized magic shows. And it was in all of the papers, and he lost his job. It was obviously considered a serious breach of trust, given the ravens' symbolic importance. But there we go. Maybe he was the one slowly dismantling.
Underground magic shows.
Yeah, with the ravens, which I just thought was great.
I very much like that.
Me too.
Brilliant.
And also, I was just thinking about how 1986 isn't that long ago. But how did he get them out? Like, did no one notice? They must have been very well behaved for him when he removed them, so that they didn't make a ruckus, right?
Well, you just put them up his sleeve, surely.
What? And they just went obligingly. Okay, fine. I just realised you're joking. But then why are they there now? Are we just trying to rebuild?
Yeah, it's probably reform.
Okay. Yeah. Secretly, Farage and his cronies are bankrolling the investment in breeding ravens, right?
I feel like all good myths is there's tourism to be had in them, and that's why there are ravens at the tower today.
Yeah, I think that is fair. So, I know that you have been reading the comics, which I, full disclaimer, have not done. And I have now been watching Sandman for the third time to try and retain, I know, I need to retain my knowledge. Something that I found really interesting is that my favourite part of the interaction between Dream and Matthew the Raven is during their trip to hell. So in the TV series, Dream needs to go to hell because his helm, which was stolen from him at the beginning when he was kept captive, is now owned by a demon in hell. He then needs to talk to Lucifer, gain permission to find the demon. But it all obviously goes awry because he's gone to hell, and who can trust Lucifer and who can trust demons? And basically, Lucifer says, okay, but you need to duel the demon. The demon says, I know, I'm going to get Lucifer to stand in for me. Lucifer accepts. Dream says he will be represented by himself, and then they go into a battle. Is this similar as to what is happening in the comic? Because everything that is about to happen after this point is going to heavily involve Matthew the Raven. And when they, spoiler, successfully get out of hell with his helm, in the Netflix series, that wouldn't happen without Matthew the Raven's input.
So the broad strokes are the same. Matthew the Raven is not involved in his trip to hell. He hasn't shown up yet.
Okay.
Sandman travels alone. The journey through hell is much the same. When he meets Lucifer, Lucifer is no longer in control of hell. There's been a civil war, and Lucifer is part of a triumvirate with Beelzebub and Azazel.
Oh.
So there are 3 rulers of hell. The battle that he has to go through to get his helm back is directly with the demon itself, rather than in the TV series it's with Lucifer.
Okay, and let me just check. Lucifer and all the other characters that are appearing in hell, are they male?
No, Beelzebub's a giant fly.
Oh, okay, I was not expecting you to say that. Okay, so there's no raven, but there's a giant fly.
And Lucifer
Okay.
is referred to as he.
Okay, so in the Netflix version, I'm going to now tell you why it's deeply disappointing that Matthew the Raven isn't in the comic version. And I'm going to dare to say that it was a better choice to include him. In the battle, it's a battle of ideas, and whoever has the strongest idea wins a round. So imagine it as a game of rock, paper, scissors. So if I said that I was a fish and you said, but I am a gannet, you would win because the gannet would eat the fish. But obviously it's more complicated and intelligent than that. But I don't want to ruin the whole scene. Point being is that Dream is holding his own and has these really wonderful ideas that are competing with Lucifer's ideas, and there's this power struggle. But there is a point when Lucifer's idea consumes all of Dream's idea, stripping him of his ability to maintain momentum in the game. And he looks defeated and he is sunken to the floor. And he does not recover of his own volition or because of the resilience of his own mind. It is actually Matthew that allows him to regain power. Firstly, Matthew does this really amazing thing, and as a little sassy raven, he jumps in between Dream and Lucifer. And Lucifer is Gwendolyn Christie in this series, so she's already a towering woman. Obviously camera angles make it look even more intimidating, and he stands between and very simply says, it's his move, with a nice faltering pause, Your Majesty. And she does desist and allow the moment to continue smugly. But Matthew is screaming his encouragement right in Dream's bloodied face. And he literally turns to him and says, dreams don't fucking die. And then, when that doesn't work, Dream of the Endless would never leave his raven here alone in hell. And it's this moment that allows Dream to access additional fortitude. It reminds him to look at the world differently because he hears Matthew's faith in him and he hears the obvious bond that they have, and he realizes and he says, I am hope. And even though it sounds trite, it's really important because hope obviously trumps any other power that Lucifer is about to present. And even she concedes that even in hell, demons must have hope. And I just think that it's really powerful that it's at this point you realize that this relationship is of equal weight, even though there's a different elements of power, because it is Matthew's line of thinking that allowed Dream to move forward. And he himself couldn't have put himself on that path. And I just think that's really beautiful. And I think that it's interesting that it's not in the comics because it humanizes Dream and it makes him a more likable hero to root for, because he's pretty morose and he's pretty arrogant, and we can let a lot of that slide because he was obviously treated really badly and contained for like 100 years by humans. So we allow him to be a bit warped, but the series has been quite intelligent, I think, by making the choice of getting him to be relatable by actually having some care for the relationship he has with Matthew at this point.
The comics take a different angle on Dream, and mainly the power of dreams and the endless. Is noted before in the series that the endless are more powerful than gods, because
Wow.
gods can die, whereas dreams, despair, death are eternal.
This sounds like that urban legend, let's call it, of that philosophy question. Do you know the one I'm about to say?
No.
There's this joke about, philosophy students, and you go off to university and spend loads of money to be asked questions like, can God commit suicide? You know, like, you're just saying, like, the endless are endless, but even gods must die. Wow, I just made me think about that.
So in the comics, Dream travels to hell alone, takes the same journey same steps as he does, but without a sassy sidekick. However, he confronts the demon directly, not Lucifer acting on the demon's behalf, and is clearly in control of the game from the outset.
Oh, well, where's the jeopardy in that, though?
There's not jeopardy. There's the power and the strength of Dream and the arrogance of demons trying to oppose someone who's better and greater than them.
So in that situation, as the reader, where does our pleasure lie?
It's the stakes of being human up until this point. Dream has just been dealing with humans and some superhumans, but now we're into the realm of angels and demons. The Lucifer, the fallen angel, the devil himself, is there, and you're starting to realise the power of Dream, going from being trapped in a glass sphere for 80 years by a wizard, up into the point that the power of dreams, his quote is, "What power would hell have if those here imprisoned were not able to dream of heaven?"
Yeah.
Proving that even all the masses of hell, he is underneath him as they still dream.
Yeah, and they use that later on as it's clear that he's won the battle. They do, that translates over in the series as well. And I think that's because that's an excellent line, isn't it? We can relate to that. It's really hard to refute that line of argument that hope doesn't belong anywhere. It belongs in every single place, which I think is really, it's that idea of it being universal, isn't it? It's got a place everywhere. People frequently cite Raven's intelligence as a reason for having an appreciation or, conversely, a dislike of the bird. But they often don't tell you what it is that marks them out as intelligent. One of the things I really like about ravens is they have really complex social lives. And one of the ways that they've been tracked as supporting this social life is their ability to mimic other sounds. And they do it for a range of reasons. So often a bird might be able to mimic the odd sound, say, of something that might frighten a predator. That's not unusual. But ravens do it for a wide variety of reasons. I think that that's really, really fascinating. So, for example, they're known to live in groups, and they're called unions or constellations. And within that group, they will include other bird calls or even human-made sounds as a form of social bonding within their group. So it's like having your own gang. They have a union or a constellation that basically have its own local patch way of communicating, which I really like because we do that as humans. So that's one of the things. They also use mimicry for territory defense. So they will mimic the sound of potential predators or competitors to sort of ward them off and mark out their territory that way, often confusing them as well as intimidating them. They also mimic the calls of other animals to create the impression of a larger or more diverse group, which will deter rivals in the area. So these things are really cool. So based on all of our observations so far about Matthew the Raven, it's very clear that in Sandman, he is the loyal companion of Morpheus. We've mentioned this multiple times. He is also used as sort of light relief sometimes because he's more straight talking, which I think is useful. And he also punctuates the tension between multiple characters sometimes and tries to sort of ground Morpheus in taking more decisive action that might protect all the key players. With that in mind, it makes him quite a unique Raven character. We have not talked about one of the most famous literary ravens. When you hear the name The Raven, what do you normally think of?
It's Edgar Allan Poe.
And how do you feel about his characterization of the Raven? Is it one you like, or would you prefer people to have Matthew the Raven in their mind, or some other character?
I think there is some of Edgar Allan Poe's Raven in Matthew.
Ooh, okay, tell me.
He's supernatural in many ways. He's not particularly prophetic, although he does have an influence on how events turn out. However, I would argue that the basis for Edgar Allan Poe's Raven might be closer to how Matthew appears on the surface, at least, which is Charles Dickens' Raven Grip.
Yeah. So I love thinking about the history of Grip, Dickens's Raven. And we have to differentiate here because there's Grip, the Raven, or actually multiple ravens that Dickens had in his company, sort of as a pet. Then there is Grip, Dickens's character that appears in Barnaby Rudge. So I think that one of my favourite literary nuggets of nerdiness here is that Edgar Allan Poe actually reviewed Charles Dickens's Barnaby Rudge. And I think it's really fascinating that he specifically commented on the character of the Raven Grip with a mixture of admiration, but also a little bit of a critique. So he noted, and I'm going to directly quote it because it's great. The Raven, too, intensely amusing as it is, might have been made more than we now see it. A portion of the designs of the story, its croakings, might have been prophetically heard in the course of the narrative, its presence darkly indicative of the course of events, a portion of the allegory. In my mind, right, this is such a clear insight into Poe's fascination with the potential symbolic role of the raven, and it clearly hints at how he might even have seen Grip as a missed opportunity for this deeper thematic exploration of darker themes, which he obviously himself then exploited when he included the raven in his own writings.
That you've read there, and then the creation of the Raven by
Yeah.
Edgar Allan Poe
It's
is
almost
one
like-
step to another.
Yeah, it's almost like a reaction, right? Like this needling need to improve on something, because Dickens is just such a phenomenal writer, and you could see that Poe's like, yeah, but hang on, why haven't you sort of mined that well of myth, myth, folklore, superstition attached to it, and why haven't you played on it more? But see, in my mind, this is where Dickens is the superior writer, and I say that, and I love Edgar Allan Poe's Gothic writings, and I really like his poetry. But I think the fact that Dickens could sort of turn his nose up at going for the obvious thing is what delights me about it.
Okay, I that may well be true. I think maybe I'm a simpler man,
Fair.
and I think Dickens loved Grip,
Yeah.
and he wanted to put his favourite pet into a book.
Yes.
So he put Grip into the book.
And he
Edgar
didn't
Allan
make him a
Poe-
mean omen, which I like. Respect to him about this.
Edgar Allan Poe never met Grip. If he had, maybe
Be won over.
he might have been more bitey.
Something I really appreciate is there's this really nice parallel between Dickens' pet ravens, called Grip, and the character Grip that he puts in his story. They both talk. So I wasn't sure if this was also a myth or like an urban legend passed down. I was like, did his raven actually talk? Come on now. I know they're really good at mimicry, but generally they're not chatty birds. But no, they both, his character and his pets, they actually did speak. And I think that that's really fascinating. But you know what they didn't ever say?
Nevermore.
Yeah, they never said that. They did say other things though. What did Grip actually say?
So Grip has been recorded as saying a few phrases. Polly put the kettle on, we'll all have tea.
Wait,
So that was in Barnaby Rudge as well.
and his Grip actually said it? Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that.
Helloa, old girl.
I think the fictional Grip had this impish personality as well. I think the bird in the novel serves as a symbol of Barnaby's innocence while also providing comic relief. And I quite like it that Matthew does the same. There is this comedic relief there with him. Apparently in the novel, he says things like, I'm a devil, creating like a slightly eerie atmosphere, but mostly just being humorous, which I think is really nice.
In fact, there's a letter that he wrote in 1840 where he joked that I love nobody here but the raven, and I only love him because he seems to have no feeling in common with anybody.
I like that.
Grip was a terror to the Dickens family. He'd bite the children.
Oh, not just that. Do you know he mimicked them? He mimicked the sound of children crying.
I'd love to believe after he'd bitten them.
Yeah, I feel like that is a specific taunt to make that noise. Or maybe to get attention as well, because obviously if the children are crying, somebody might go to their aid. So if he's doing it, maybe it gets him attention, which I just thought was funny. It's like that age-old thing of any attention's good attention.
He terrorised the dog, which was a Newfoundland.
What?
So not a small dog. Stole its food. There's stories of digging up hammers that he'd buried in the garden.
Oh no, that's really menacing.
It's the story is told in such a way that suggests that the hammer was important to the carpenter, and Grip had realised that and therefore
Removed it. And concealed it.
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting is obviously years later, there was a really interesting study done by a cognitive biologist at Lund University in Sweden. So this gentleman's name was Matthias Osvath. He trained ravens to use tools, and then he would also get them to trade those tools for rewards. So in his experiment, imagine step 1, training the raven to use a tool. So completing an action with a tool. Then step 2, using the tool effectively in exchange for a reward. They adapted so well to this that he pushed the limits of the experiment, and he offered the birds a choice. They could either have an immediate reward, so in this case it would be a single cat biscuit, or they could choose the tool or from a variety of other objects. He found that almost 3/4 of the birds would pick the tool, even though when they did so, they knew that they would have to wait at least 15 minutes to be able to use that tool to obtain a higher number of cat biscuits. He literally proved that they had control over instant gratification.
And that they can plan for the future.
Exactly. And I think that that is so amazing because humans have, arrogantly assumed that that is not something that birds are able to do.
I think this ties into studies that estimate that they have the intelligence of a 7-year-old human as well. If you've ever been around toddlers, planning for the future is not a strong point at that age.
No. And I think as well, what's interesting is obviously in the experiment, they know they are still getting a reward. if later on they can delay that gratification, but they know I will be able to use the tool for the reward. Whereas if it was, do you want to keep the tool and use it to find your own rewards and not exchange it, would have they still done so? So they obviously don't want to test that, because the answer would probably be no. Why would they keep a tool if they're never going to get a reward for it at any point?
It's an experiment for you, Kelly.
It's not an experiment for me. It sounds sad. I would feel really bad not giving them any rewards.
Just give them all the cat
I know. I'd be like, have them all. Was there anything about ravens that you wanted to make sure that other people celebrated more, or that anything that you hold dear?
I love the intelligence of ravens and the social aspect to them as well. It's very easy to anthropomorphize animals, and I think ravens are a perfect candidate for it. They appear to take joy in their actions. They can do things that appear to just be for fun, such as Grip terrorizing the children and pets in the Dickens household.
Yes, and they use stunt flying to attract their mates. And again, like you mentioned, it's just because they can. So they will do barrel rolling, they fly upside down, and they even somersault. There is no set dance though. Like, I know that everyone's a bit desensitized to this because they watch documentaries and you see these really complicated sort of mating dances. But what I like about ravens is it's not a set dance passed down by generation, fastidiously captured. They just do what they feel like doing. They want to attract a mate with a bunch of barrel rolling, they will. Otherwise, they might not bother.
Showing off because they can.
Yeah. I think with ravens, they have an omnipresence in people's life as well, because unlike certain birds, they use the same nesting site. And sometimes nesting sites have been used for up to 100 years. Obviously, with the vast changes in our urban environment since the Industrial Revolution, I guess that has changed that. But you can imagine before electricity, before so much, urban sprawl, there would be ravens at sites year after year after year, and generation after generation going back there, and they become part of the fabric of people's daily lives. And I think that's something I really like about them. Each generation rebuilds the nest as well. They just keep contributing to keeping this going, and I think that that's something kind of nice about them, rather than it being a bird will return to its nest site, but it tends to be the same breeding pair, rather than it being the same, the full lineage, if you like, which I think is really interesting.
There's a feeling of permanence in a society, and you still see it in the countryside. You see a tree that's in the winter full of nests.
Yeah. There's also a string. Have you heard of the string pulling experiment?
No.
So the string pulling experiment is by Bernd Heinrich and Thomas Buchner. I just try and say the names confidently and then hope that it's fine. So this was done in the early 2000s, and in this experiment, food was attached to a string that was hanging from a perch, and basically the raven's job was to figure out how to pull up the string to get the food. So they obviously were not just flying free and able to launch themselves at the food. They were contained, and they would have to move the string upwards, otherwise they would never be able to get the food. Ravens were able to successfully pull up the string by stepping on loops and pulling it incrementally until they reached the food. And it was just amazing. It shows they understood the relationship between cause and effect, and then could plan their actions accordingly. I love that.
It also reminds me of, do you know about the Archimedes experiment?
Oh, I don't think I do.
So you imagine, if you will, a tall container of water.
Yeah.
Is much taller than the water level. So say it's a third full of water.
Not half full. Is this not?
Third.
Are you sure it's not the glass half full experiment?
It's not the glass
Okay,
half
fine.
full.
Go on.
That's a bit metaphysical for a raven, maybe.
Okay.
7 years old.
Okay.
So floating on the water is some food, a cat biscuit, if you like.
Yeah.
The raven can get its beak in, but can't get enough in to reach the cat biscuit.
Right.
And they'll very quickly learn there's rocks around to just put rocks in the water until the level rises until they can get it.
So they would not be able to knock the container over. They have to find a way to move the water level.
That's the solution to the puzzle.
I think what's really worrying about that is I would probably starve to death and not solve the puzzle. I would just be like, this is insurmountable. I don't... Because how do they not know? Like, how do they know that they're not going to like crush the biscuit or break the biscuit or it just ends up at the bottom?
Well,
It's just worth a go.
it's not going to get any worse, is it? They haven't got the biscuit yet.
No, but they're expending a lot of energy. I would have just been busy overthinking it while the biscuit dissolved. Whereas if I just got on, maybe I should just tell myself, be more Raven.
Yeah.
That's going to be
That's so Raven.
Yeah, that's... Do you understand the reference you just made? Okay, cool. Just checking. I think that we're probably best leaving it on a really good joke because I don't have any left in me. So thank you so much for being my guest, Joe, and for sharing your love of Matthew the Raven and ravens.
Thank you, Kelly. It's been a pleasure.
Yay!
Elliot explains. Ravens, ravens, ravens. My friend's called Raven. She told me that ravens can represent good luck, bad luck, or death. My raven is fun, kind, and artistic.